Hello and welcome to this special webinar in recognition of World Cervical Cancer Day, which is on Monday, November the 17th. My name is Dave King and I'm editor of Rotary magazine for Great Britain and Ireland. And it's genuinely my pleasure to host today's session on behalf of the International Rotary Fellowship of Healthcare Professionals. Now, before we begin, a couple of housekeeping items. Please keep yourselves on mute while our speakers are presenting. And if you have any questions, please type them into the Q&A box. My faithful friend Gianna is keeping an eye on them, and we'll address as many as we can if time allows. We also ask you to share and repost a short Rotary International video, which we'll be playing at the end of the webinar. And that's going to help to amplify that message to our networks, to your networks in particular. So on behalf of Rotary and our partners, I want to say how wonderful it is that so many of you have joined us today from around the world. And I'm mindful too that many of you may be watching a recording of this. So welcome, and I hope you enjoy today's session. So let's talk cervical cancer. It's true that we gather at a critical moment, one marked by both challenge and hope. Globally last year, there were an estimated 662,000 new cases of cervical cancer and approximately 349,000 deaths. Each one represents a mother, a sister, a friend, lives interrupted, dreams deferred, and families affected. But what makes this tragedy even more profound is that cervical cancer is, in the vast majority of cases, preventable. We have the tools. We've got vaccinations, screening, early treatment, yet far too many. Social economic cost alone in the UK, for example, where I'm sitting, is estimated at £700 million annually, or to put it another way, 921 million US dollars. So that's why today matters, because we're not simply talking about disease, we're talking about hope, we're talking about action, and the possibility that future generations will perhaps look back and say, we ended cervical cancer as a public health threat. So today we have a fine list of speakers to expand your horizons. And first up is Dr. Linda Eckert. Now, Linda is a professor of obstetrics, gynecology, and infectious diseases at the University of Washington in Seattle on the west coast of America. Linda is an internationally renowned expert in immunization and cervical cancer prevention, and she has served as a consultant on the World Health Organization. Linda's first book, Enough Because We Can Stop Cervical Cancer, was published last year, and the book delivers an impassioned plea for the elimination of cervical cancer. It weaves the powerful stories of women from 6 continents who have battled cervical cancer and wanted to tell their stories to move others to action. So today, Linda will help us understand the current state of diagnosis and the hope that exists in cervical cancer. Linda, over to
Thank
you.
you. Thank you so much for that kind introduction, and it's really my privilege to be here. Next slide. So today I'm just going to briefly give an overview of what is cervical cancer. We heard a little bit about some of the numbers, which I'll review. I'll talk about this exciting WHO elimination strategy, as this is the first time WHO has ever wanted to eliminate a cancer. A little bit more about some of the impediments, and lastly, focus on advocacy as we move into the rest of our program. Next. So, what would you say if I told you that we have this cancer that's almost entirely preventable? And just think about that, preventable cancer. We don't usually use those two words together. But we have this cancer that's preventable, but it's killing a woman every 90 seconds around the world. So during this webinar, we'll lose many women. And it includes every 2 hours a death in the United States. And it's increasing. Next. And as mentioned, we have the ability already to end this cancer because we know what causes it, how to find it, how to treat it. And yes, we even have a really effective and safe vaccine, but it continues to march forward, killing more women every year. Next. So what is cervical cancer? Next. Well, what is the cervix? Next, the cervix is the lower portion of the uterus. It's the junction between the uterus and the vagina, and it is what dilates and opens when a baby passes through. So that's where the cervix lies in the body. Next. Most of the time, cervical cancer grows slowly. And what is it? Well, it's when these normal cells that line the cervix become replaced by cancer cells. And most of the time, women do not know they have cervical cancer until it's quite advanced. But because it takes years to develop in many women, we have a chance to find it and to end it before it becomes deadly. Next. So the main cause of cervical cancer is human papillomavirus, which is a mouthful, so we always say HPV. And 95% of cervical cancers are caused by HPV. But HPV is extremely common. Almost all people who have sexual intercourse will acquire HPV at some point in their lives. But the best news about HPV is most of the time our bodies can get rid of it on its own without any help. Next. Now, not all HPV is dangerous. There are actually over 200 types, and we number the HPV based on the formation or the structure of a protein that sits right on the surface of the virus. And the good news about this virus is it doesn't mutate. Means is that a vaccine developed in 2007 still works because the HPV types don't change, and it can work all over the world. And of all these 200 types, there's only 12 types that really can cause the changes that lead to cancer. And those are the types we worry about and test for. HPV 16 is the most dangerous of those types, followed by HPV 18. And it is spread by intimate contact. Next slide. So when do we worry? Well, as mentioned, most of the time our body gets rid of it on its own, but it's when we have one of these high risk types that can last in our bodies and our bodies doesn't get rid of them, that we have to worry about potential precancer and cancer changes. And that's what screening does, is look for those precancer and cancer changes. Next. So where are the cases? Next. Well, they're not evenly spread. The dark green here represents where we see the most cases in the world, and you can see a large portion are in Africa. But actually, because of the large populations in China and India, over half the cervical cancer cases in the world come from women who live in either India or China. And it most commonly strikes women in their 40s while they're still in the workforce, caring for children, caring for elders, caring for their communities. So the community-wide devastation is very significant from this disease. Next. And the one thing I do want to mention is we're focusing on cervical cancer here, but HPV actually causes 6 types of cancer listed here on this slide. And the cervical cancer is 95% caused by HPV, but if you look at these other cancers, the circle and the percentage represents the amount of that particular cancer that's caused by HPV. So you can see that HPV does a lot of damage, not just to the cervix. Next. The largest share, however, of HPV cancers is cervical cancer, which is why the World Health Organization is focused on it, and because 95% of cervical cancer is caused by HPV. The triangle on the left shows the orange amount, which represents cervical cancer as HPV cancers in lower income countries. And on the right, the percentage of HPV cancers that are in higher income countries caused by the cervix. So you can see that the orange is the predominant amount, or cervical cancer is the largest amount of HPV cancers. Next. Because of this, WHO launched this elimination strategy. And when they were getting ready to launch this elimination strategy, they did some economics to figure out how much money actually could be saved if we prevented cervical cancer. And they found that every dollar we spent on screening returned $3.20 directly to the economy. But if you add in all the unpaid labor women work, it was $26 returned to the economy for every dollar spent. So it's actually a wonderfully cost-effective public health intervention. Next. And the elimination strategy centers on three things, which I'll talk briefly about following. It centers on vaccination. We want to try to vaccinate 90% of girls by the age of 15. We want to screen 70% of women between 35 and 45. And we want to offer treatment that's effective to 90% of those individuals who need treatment either for precancer or cancer. Next. And what we're really talking about here is our society. In 2020 alone, we had over 200,000 children become orphans because of cervical cancer. Listed on the slide are all the things we know that happens to individuals who become orphans without their mother. And so one of the things to think about is it's not just the women who are the victims of this disease, it's all of us. Next. So we have these three simple steps or pillars for the ways to prevent cervical cancer: vaccination, screening, and then follow-up and treatment. Next. So the HPV vaccine, which first became available in 2006, works by actually preventing HPV infection. So you want to give it before you're exposed to the infection, ideally. So you try to give it at a younger age, and it works incredibly well. All of the vaccines that are on the market protect against HPV 16 and 18. And some of the vaccines on the market also add other types that they prevent. So all of the vaccines on the market either prevent between 70 to 90% of cervical cancer. And you want to give it before, ideally before being exposed to cervical cancer or to the viruses that can cause it. And that is 9 to 14, but in many countries it's given up to 20 or even 26. You can give it to girls and boys. The World Health Organization advises either using 1 or 2 doses up to age 20. And we have given over 270 million doses. We know that this vaccine is extremely safe. Next. And it is amazingly effective. It is so rare to have a vaccine this effective. And that is why a lot of countries now are very close to eliminating cervical cancer. The countries that started vaccinating and got many of their girls vaccinated in their young teen years, such as Australia, Sweden, Scotland, are seeing marked drops in cervical cancer. So we know it works. And again, we know it's safe. It's been tested so well and given all over the world. Next. And again, it protects not just against cervical cancer, but it can protect against all 6 of these cancers. So just imagine getting one shot at the age of 14 and having protection against all these cancers. It's kind of crazy. It's such a good deal. Next slide. The second way we prevent cervical cancer is screening. And screening has traditionally been done by placing something in the vagina so that you can open the walls of the vagina and see the cervix, called a speculum. And we have traditionally done it with a pap smear, looking for changes in cells that are on the cervix. But now we also do HPV testing, where we can look for the HPV that can cause cancer, and those swabs can be self-collected without a speculum. And we also do it with inspecting with putting vinegar water on the cervix. But the goal of all of these tests is to try to detect changes in the cervix before it turns into cancer, and then to treat that precancer. Next. If this map shows who is getting screened where, and orange is very low rates of screening. The darker the orange, the less the screening. And overall, 32% of women in the world are screened as recommended for cervical cancer. So we still have a long ways to go to reach this pillar for elimination. Next. And then the last step is to treat. Both follow up abnormal results and to either remove or treat the precancer or the cancer. And early detection absolutely saves lives. But we're working on ways to improve the equity for access to treatment for both precancer and cancer. Next. And one slide quickly here on the cancer treatment. There's a lot of ways to treat it. If it's found early, there's a high cure, but almost all treatment leads to loses the ability to have children. And so it's much better, next slide, to go ahead and prevent because you really don't want to have to go through this treatment if you don't need to. But we're going to hear from survivors who have made it through this treatment and will tell us their stories shortly. Next. So what are some impediments? Next. Well, this is a highly stigmatized cancer because it takes place in a place that's below the belt organ in the cervix, which nobody really talks about. Some cultures don't even have a name for cervix, and it's sexually transmitted. So often the woman is blamed, and it can be very hard to talk about this. So that's one of the impediments, actually, is getting people to even talk about it. Another is the decisions that get made in cultures about what kind of screening gets funded and what kind of treatment happens. And the third is just that it's hard for a lot of women because of the work that they do to get to care and follow up and prioritize themselves. So these are just some of the obstacles beyond just the cost and the tests that we need to work on and that we can really do a lot of advocacy toward. Next. So my particular advocacy journey was after taking care of women for 30 years, I decided that the stories are what needed to be out there. So I collected these stories, as mentioned, from women all over the world who graciously offered their stories, and I put it together with information that everybody could understand. It's not a medical book, to try to say, hey, we can prevent this cancer. Let's do it. And this book came out last year. Next. And so my hope is that if we use data and science together with advocacy and stories, we can see a lot of change. And that will be our dynamic duo for moving forward. Next. And so with that, I'll say thank you. And also look forward to hearing the stories of the survivors, one of whom Barbara was gracious enough to give her story. And it's in chapter 13 of this book if you want to read more about it. And thank you so much.
Linda, what a cracking start. Thank you ever so much. And if you've got any questions you want to ask Linda, then please type them into the into our Q&A box because Gianna is keeping a keen eye on the questions there. I'll come to you in a second, Gianna, but I just wanted to ask you, Linda, it was interesting to look at that map of the world. It really tells quite a story, really, doesn't it? Where you look at half the cases are in India and China. Is it down to stigma? Why is it down to those particular areas, do you think?
There's quite a few reasons. Stigma is certainly one of them, and I'm sure our survivors can speak to that more about how hard this disease is to talk about. But also, screening is hard to do, and
Mm,
these are countries that haven't had widespread screening, and they also haven't offered the HPV vaccine routinely yet. China's starting next year. That's really exciting. In
right.
2026, they're rolling out the vaccine. And India can get it in the private sector, but not in the public sector. So I think when those two countries are able to offer the vaccine and screening is when we're going to see just a huge drop.
Fantastic. Gianna, we've got some questions.
We have a couple questions in the chat. I can kind of combine them into one. Dr. Eckert, what is the seroconversion rate of the HPV vaccine, and how do we know that the vaccine lasts and does not need repeating?
Yeah, thanks. Those are great questions. The seroconversion rate is 99%. It's incredibly effective. And so far, we have data out 25 years that shows it's lasting. And so that was why the World Health Organization actually felt comfortable saying one dose is possible, or you can use two, and to try to use it below the eight, as young as possible. But so we have really good, compelling data that we don't need a booster. And if you get the vaccine, we have compelling data that it works.
Thank you very much. And one last question for you. Two more questions. Why are boys vaccinated? And then, as a woman of 27 years of age, can someone still get the vaccine?
Yeah, so boys are vaccinated because they also get HPV cancers. They get head and neck cancer, which is 70% caused by HPV 16. And so they get penile cancer, they get anal cancer. So they get cancers, but also if you vaccinate the boys, you do decrease the HPV in the general population, and that can offer some protection to girls. And then as far as the age for getting the vaccine, it depends on where you live. Remember, it works best by preventing infections. But if you're 27, for instance, in the US, they offer it up to 45. And everybody could get it, but it's a matter of whether you have to pay for it and how much you have to pay for it, depending on where you live and what the recommendations are.
Thank you so much, Dave. I think we're ready to move on to the next segment. Thanks, Dr. Eckert.
Thank you. I really
Linda,
appreciate it.
thank you ever so much. That's fantastic. And please keep those questions coming in because Gianna's keeping a keen eye on the questions, and I'm sure the speakers would appreciate them too. So, just to prove how global this webinar is, we move from the Emerald City of Seattle in America to India and Zimbabwe, where we meet our next guests. Daman Mangat from Chandigarh and Barbara Kamba from Zimbabwe are both cancer survivors whose experiences bring powerful lived perspectives. Daman says that she is proud to acknowledge that the fact that for 31 years she has been a cancer survivor who has been blessed to be able to reach out to other patients, becoming confident, fearless, empathetic, and with a boundless faith in God. Meanwhile, Barbara, who describes herself as the emotional alchemist, has written a spellbinding biography. In it, she says, "On my journey, I have survived cervical cancer, endometriosis, a hysterectomy, divorce, abuse, cardiac arrests, deafness, a swollen gland in the brain, and even living with autoimmune disease. Each challenge," she says, "comes with its own set of lessons, but I've continually seen the power that comes with redefining and rebuilding your identity on your own terms." Wow. I mean, that is some life. So their stories, both Daman and Barbara's stories, remind us of the courage, resilience, and transformation which follows diagnosis. Barbara and Daman, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for that beautiful introduction. Uh, like, like I was introduced, I am Barbara Kambanyati. I'm a cervical cancer survivor, and I always love to believe that surviving it's a daily thing. Afterwards, after the treatment, after everything, we survive every day. You know. First of all, I think like Dr. Linda spoke about how we don't speak about cervical cancer because it's something that is considered a taboo, especially in the African community. We don't even have a name for the cervix to start with. It's all bungled up together as a womb. From the vagina right up to the ovaries, it's all a womb. There are no differences. So talking about it brings a lot of stigma, a lot of shame, a lot of guilt in the one who has been diagnosed. And then also, if you're a married woman, it's even worse. Your husband also feels like people are judging him that his wife is out of control in a way because she must be sleeping around. That's why she got cancer. And if you're unmarried, then you must be promiscuous, which means you are shaming your family. You are bringing shame to the whole family and people who know you. It can be a very lonely journey. And the issue of not being able to procreate afterwards is also one of the other challenges. And that's part of why I was saying you tend to survive every day after the treatment, after the diagnosis, and you've celebrated that you're alive and everything. I have noticed that every day I still have to survive maybe questions from people saying why don't you have children, or people who feel they are entitled to giving their own opinion, judging you for being selfish and not being able to have children, and also men feeling like if you don't have a uterus, then you can't procreate, and that means you are going to be the reason why their line or bloodline ends because of your cancer and your surviving. But one thing one of the important lessons that I got from my diagnosis was that there is so much power in community, you know. It's a journey that can be very lonely, but with the right tribe, I call my girlfriends my tribe. They would come and be with me and offer all kinds of support, whether it's emotional or I don't know, all kinds of support. I have a friend, Gertrude, she would come and even bring me meals. I'm I don't think anyone can accuse me of being good in the kitchen. I'm really bad at cooking. And the funny thing, I'm a daughter of a chef. So imagine being a disgrace to the family. And then you dare to have cancer. You don't even cook. You are shaming the family. My father is a chef, and here I am. I can't cook. And then I don't have children. I have cancer, which is also taken personally by the parents. Like you are shaming us for not making us grandparents. It becomes very taxing. So I think that's why I wanted to talk about the surviving, which makes it easier if we can eliminate cervical cancer, then we have less people having to survive all these kinds of things. Because like now, my only surviving parent is my dad, but he does talk about how I, I, I I brought shame to him, and I did this to. He's not sure if I was fighting him by not being a parent. It's very strange, but he is not even aware that this also affects me when people speak like this. And then there's also the issue, like in my case, I had, before my hysterectomy, I went through 12 operations. The hysterectomy was 13. Uh, Then afterwards, I developed a hernia, which added up my operations to 14. So when it's cloudy or rainy or it's cold, I also have weather pains. Operations seem to be coming alive. And not to mention the phantom pains. They are one of the challenges that I've had to go through. Like I get these pains. I always say I feel like the uterus is trying to grow back because I can't explain the pains. That's the best the explanation I can give. That is trying to grow back. So it's a journey of surviving and learning to live with what you have, like making my new reality, my new identity, instead of hanging on to what was or what could have been. I have learned to embrace the here and now, and also to use my story as a way to encourage other women and men to learn that the cervical cancer is not something that we should be pointing fingers at each other, but we need to come together and support each other. Those who have been diagnosed, they need all the correct options to help them seek treatment and save their lives instead of keeping it a secret because it's a shameful condition to talk about until it's too late and they die. So it's quite a journey, but it's very fulfilling because I get to see the work we are doing as Farm for Till, spreading the word, raising awareness, and actually having women now giving testimonies about how they got treatment early and they are doing well. I hope I didn't go beyond my minutes. Over to you.
Barbara, you did not know that. That was fantastic, and you very much are, as you say, it's a bit a journey of survival. And I know for Daman, you've been on that journey for 31 years. So do you want to talk about your experience, please?
Yeah, good evening, everybody. Thanks for being here today. It means a lot to see people coming together to listen and support us, the survivors. When I was given the word survivor, I felt very bad. It was a shock to me. But I must say that when it comes as important as cervical cancer, we have been a winner. I'm Daman and I'm 73 years old now. And I have been a case of early detection and cure for cervical cancer. I was diagnosed with cervical cancer at the age of 41. And today I want to share a bit of my journey with you, not to scare you, but to show you that hope, healing, strength are possible in the darkest of moments. As I was aware and careful about my hygiene, I noticed a watery discharge. I immediately went to my gynecologist and got checked. Later, I was asked to get a colposcopy and followed by a biopsy. So, within 10 days, I knew I had cancer of cervix. I wasn't emotionally prepared to get the big C in my dictionary. So, I was operated. Luckily, I had a lot of doctor friends, and I was operated immediately after 10 days by
Sorry.
institute. We have the biggest cancer institute in Mumbai. And he told me that I give you full guarantee you'll be cured of it. And I was given a Werdheim's hysterectomy at that age, which removed all my reproductive system from my body. Once I accepted my diagnosis, I became focused on becoming victorious for my two boys and my family. My mother was always in denial. No, no, she doesn't have cancer. It's just that doctors don't know what they're looking at. My faith in Almighty kept me strong. My reproduction system gone, and they even cut a bit of my vagina, which created problems in my having my relation with my husband also. But my husband was very understanding and cooperative, the whole family. Because of the extent of my surgery, I didn't have to go through radiotherapy or chemotherapy. My family and friends and all my doctor friends, they stood by me in every way, offering me immense love, care. If there is one thing I want you all to take away from my story is that early detection truly saves life. If I am alive today, it was my being careful about my hygiene and everything. When there is untimely spotting, it is commonly mistaken for early menopause. However, every change in your body or new symptom should be taken seriously. Cervical cancer is one of the most preventable types of cancer, which Linda has given in her slides also, especially with regular screening and HPV vaccine. The NGO I'm working with, we got about 10 days back about 30 ladies vaccinated for cervical cancer. I must tell you all that in India also we have a lot of vaccination going now for cervical cancer. It is not given by the doctor, but like Linda said, in the private sector. And we as the NGOs, and we feel it's our duty to um, towards the community. So we collect funds and we get the women injected. So please, if you haven't had a pap smear or HPV test recently, make your appointment immediately today. Also encourage in your life like mothers, daughters, sisters, friends to do the same. Till today, I've had no problems. Yes, I was on HRT for a long time, which may be affecting my bones or something, but I didn't have to go through my menopause because of the doctor who advised me to use HRT. Till today, I've had no problems. I keep myself busy and active with the NGO called Sahayata Charitable Welfare Society. To remove the stigma of cancer, Sahayata helps patients in PGI, that is the Postgraduate Institute in Chandigarh, where we have a very good setup of doctors. Sahayata helps patients in PGI OPDs with monetary help for cancer medication under the supervision of the efficient doctors. We counsel patients who are dealing with grief, fear, and shock. We advise, we go to schools, we give them um, awareness talks, schools, colleges, banks, clubs, ladies' clubs. We try and make them aware of what all problems can be faced if they don't look after their early detection. Most recently, we have been focusing on helping girls get cervical cancer vaccine through our NGO. After my experience with cancer, I started to look at life from a new perspective, became more confident, fearless, empathetic, and my faith in God is boundless. Today, I'm proud to say I'm 31 years as a survivor. I'm lucky and blessed with the opportunity to reach out to the patients with cancer via Sahayata and help them in whatever way I can. But just to add to my story, I am a case of heart problem and I have two stents, which because of God knows what reasons, I'm not overweight. I do exercise and walk, but I have my heart issues, and I mean nothing can deter me from going out to the hospitals, helping the patients, and today I'm a different person altogether. Thank you everybody for a good listening.
Demand, fantastic story. And Barbara as well. Thank you for sharing such powerful stories because I think hearing the human voice behind the numbers reminds us that behind every statistic, there's a life, a family, and a community. And I think some of the messages that you delivered there were really important. Gianna, how are we doing with the questions? Shall we bring Barbara on to answer a few questions here?
I think we're good with questions for now if we want to keep moving through and ask a few at the end.
Okay, all right. Well, Demand, Barbara, thank you ever so much for your time today. Absolute pleasure and truly inspirational. And good luck to you both. Thank you very much for sharing your stories this afternoon. So
Thank you for having us.
now we move from a personal narrative to what one might describe as a structural possibility and how prevention makes a difference. We saw that back there really with Damana and with Barbara. So joining us today from Birmingham, Alabama in the United States is Professor Isabel Scarinci, who is the Vice Chair for Global and Rural Women's Health at the University of Alabama. Isabel is a Rotarian who has partnered with the Rotary Club of Colombo in Sri Lanka and more recently with the Rotary Club of Guatemala Sur towards the elimination of cervical cancer. In 2023, Alabama became the first and only US state to launch a statewide plan to eliminate cervical cancer as a public health problem through a partnership between the Rotary Club of Birmingham, the Rotary Club of Lafayette, and other organizations. And in 2021, Isabel was chosen as one of 6 champions of health worldwide by Rotary International. Now, Isabel leads initiatives for community-based prevention in underserved populations, and she does that through the groundbreaking initiative, which we'll hear much about in the next half an hour, called Operation Wipeout. Today, Isabel will speak about how she believes that prevention can eliminate cervical cancer within a generation. Now, that would be some achievement. Isabel, you're very welcome.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here and talk about my passion because brief Rotary eliminated polio. Now we have another mission that is eliminating cervical cancer. Next. So our journey, although today I'll be talking about Alabama, our journey really started in Sri Lanka. And I will not focus a lot on that, but it has been such a success. And the Rotarians in the Rotary Club of Colombo have been really the champions in the world and really a great model for other countries. And they have partnered with the Minister of Health. They are able to change the guidelines in the country, and they are really on the path to be the first low and middle income country to eliminate cervical cancer, which is phenomenal. Next. Well, as we are working Sri Lanka, we need to look at our own belly button here in Alabama, and where we have a state with one of the highest cervical cancer incidence and mortality in the United States. And this is unacceptable. As Linda pointed out, there are the burden of disease in many other countries, but some counties in my own home state have incidence and mortality comparable to those countries. And that's when we need to focus here. Next. So we got together, the Rotary Club of Birmingham and many other clubs across the state, and government. The Alabama Department of Public Health has been phenomenal. It's very hard to eliminate cervical cancer and move forward on this mission if we do not have government support. Because at the end of the day, us as Rotarians, we can do the education, we can do the mobilization, we can activate our connections, but a lot of times for sustainability, we need government. And we got people together and was very grassroots from especially rural counties in Alabama, and came up with a plan, focus on 3 pillars: HPV vaccination, screening, and adherence to follow up. Next. And we have a very progressive state health officer who then launched the plan, making it an official plan for the state of Alabama. And as David mentioned, we continue to be the first state to have such a plan and are moving forward, but many other states under the leadership of Rotary, Oregon, Mississippi, Louisiana, and others are following our model and also launching those plans in those states. Next. So our goals are pretty simple: 80% vaccination completion, 90% of women screened, and 90% of women adherent to treatment. We do not talk a lot about adherence to treatment or follow-up, but even in our own medical center, we have one of the largest cervical cancer centers in the United States. 40% of women screened in our center do not come back for follow-up, when it to me is a tragedy, because most of those are just follow-up that they need, is not cancer. Next. So we got partners together. We do not have one pot of money. What partners were very specific about, they didn't want one organization to lead. They wanted this to belong to everybody. And that has been phenomenal because as partners approach us, we say, what can you do? And they do it. We do not, we're not prescriptive. We do not tell them what to do. And they have done a lot of things that I will highlight some. Those are some examples. Those are billboards across the state that has been very well received in the state. And Conquering Cervical Cancer is a documentary done by a group in Australia that features Operation Wipeout and is being streamed on PBS in the United States currently. Next. So the way we did is very much the way we did polio. I had polio, and I was in Rotary in 1985 when we started Polio Plus. And the way we did was not just saying, well, I got my child vaccination, I'm done. We made an effort, Rotary International, that everybody could play a role, no matter what walk of life they are coming from. If you're a dentist, if you're a Rotarian, if you're a faith-based leader. So we're doing the same thing with cervical cancer. So we developed handouts and guides for all these different professions that you can see in our website, kind of giving them hints of what they can do. Next. And also, because we have Rotarians who are financial managers, insurance leaders, CEOs that are not what we call champion briefings, where we train them on how to get the information out. And we have a plan. How do you get started? How do you engage other partners? How you develop an action plan? And how to empower them to be those leaders in their communities, regardless if they are a healthcare professional or not. Next. Also, we have materials for them on how to talk to a hesitant parent about vaccination or a hesitant woman about screening or adherence to follow-up. And we train them on how to address those. Usually, most of the time, are intrapersonal barriers or emotional barriers and not so much structural. And we then train them on how to do that. And also those materials are available in our website. All of our materials are not copyrighted. Anybody can access and is available to anybody. And at the end, I'll have my email if you have questions or need additional information. Next. So some successes. Of course, the first one is increasing awareness that cervical cancer can be eliminated. A lot of women, they don't want to even be screened because they said, I can't afford to have a diagnosis right now. So that positive message of elimination has really resonated with people. We have engaged a lot of Rotary clubs and volunteers, and the clubs, small or large, and you're going to hear an example of a very small club and what they have been able to accomplish. Engagement of colleges and universities. In my own university, the students create a club where they then promote all the activities. Healthcare providers to adhere to guidelines that a lot of providers are not adhering to guidelines in the United States, and increase access to screening and HPV vaccination. So if we do an activity in one county, the Alabama Department of Public Health help us, and they send nurses from the other counties to assist. And we know personnel is limited, so we found a creative way to do that. Next click, please. The major game changer for us has been an initiative by the Alabama Department of Public Health, where women in rural counties, when they have an abnormal cervical cancer screening, they need to go to Birmingham or Montgomery, the larger cities. So they start training nurse practitioners where they go where women are being screened, and has been phenomenal. You can see the numbers. They were doing about 100 cases per year. Now, just this year, they're over 1,000. A lot of them were referred to us at UAB, and now one of my chair the other day made the comment. She said, "Gosh, you're being so successful that now we do not have enough colposcopy cases to train our fellows," which is a great problem to have. Next. This one you're gonna hear from our two-star students in a little bit, so I'm not gonna steal their thunder. But this is a club, Rotary Club of Lafayette, with 20 Rotarians, really partner with the school system. The superintendent has been amazing in his her positive message. It was a him, and now it's a different superintendent. And they developed a vaccination campaign county-wide, in a county where vaccination was 35% when we started. Now they got 81% in one high school and 65% in the other. They developed a toolkit for other school systems that is also available on the website, and an activity, a coloring book to engage middle students. And they are working with middle school students, and you're going to hear from them. Next. So these are some of the highlights. We just started 2 years ago, and now, you know, it's very in its infancy. Lessons that we learn, we're not ready. When we started in my club and the Alabama Department of Public Health, we didn't have a website, we didn't have the evidence-based materials, and people and partners start coming. What can we do? The most important piece, if you plan to establish this in your club, is to have a champion with credibility. Today in the United States, because of COVID and many other reasons, the healthcare providers have lost some of the trust, but Rotarians have the trust. They trust that leader in their communities, and they're coming to them. If they're financial planners, the fire chief, the chief of police, those are the individuals that they trust, and that's us, Rotarians. Be open, engage everybody. Everybody can make a contribution with their expertise, with their connections, and give them something to do. They all need something to do. Very important. This we did before we even start launching the plan. We need to be sure that we can take care of the problems we find. So we made sure we had a vaccination, we had screening, and the cancer centers across the state committed to take care of the cancers we find. Very clear short-term and long-term goals are very important, so that keeps everybody on track. And we celebrate a lot, small gains, big gains, and always give the credit to the partners. And always focusing on the mission and leveraging the power of Rotary, government, and also having an academic center that can lend you the evidence-based strategies that help you in your mission. And above all, be patient, persistent. If you told my mother in 1963, when I was 8 months old and had polio in both arms and both legs, that one day we would eradicate polio, probably she would not believe you. And look where we are today. So we can do the same with cervical cancer. Thank you.
Isabel, fantastic. Certainly shows the the power of partnership, doesn't it? And what an inspirational story there, and really reinforces the notion that cancer is something that can be prevented. Gianna, how's the Q&A board going? We've got time for a couple of questions.
Yeah, the Q&A is very busy, which we appreciate. Thanks, everybody. Isabel, we've got one question for you. How would you describe the current financial support given the ongoing global economic turmoil, and what can Rotary do to replicate and scale up the programs that have been successful for you in Alabama?
Okay. Well, I don't worry about the finances much because a lot of times when you don't have the money, that's when people come forward. I'm not saying in any way that we don't need the money. I'm a researcher. I get a lot of NIH funding, millions of dollars. And we are getting more done with this with no funding because then there is a donation from here. There is I have this skill that I'm gonna help you for free. So that I think that's where if everybody believes in the mission, then we move forward. However, not only for Alabama, but for other countries. I work a lot in global health, government. Do not start anything if you do not have the commitment from the government because it's not going to be sustainable. At the end of the day, they are the ones who need to sustain what we start.
Thank you, Isabel. And one last question for you, more technical. If someone is having a hysterectomy for benign conditions, why does the surgeon not remove the cervix to prevent cervical cancer?
I'll defer that to Linda. She has more expertise doing that than I do.
Linda? We can put that in for the queue. Oh, there she is.
Yeah, so sorry, it took me a minute to get back on. I think it depends a lot on patient preference. It depends on what the shape of the uterus is. It depends on the type of surgery that approach, whether it's laparoscopic or big incision. So there's a lot of things that go into that discussion. And it's not a simple yes or no answer. But you're right, if the cervix is not removed, it is important to continue to be screened as the recommendations state you should as you go forward in your life, even if you don't have the body of your uterus, but you still have your cervix.
Thanks,
Linda?
Linda. Back to you, Dave.
No, Linda, Gianna, thank you very much. Linda, Isabel, thank you ever so much for your presentations. I have a feeling we may be calling upon you later on in the webinar, but thank you very much for now. Bye. Okay, let's move on then quickly, shall we? And let's hear from some young leaders from India and the United States who are working on the ground with vaccination programs and awareness campaigns. First up, I want to introduce you to three young Rotaractors from the northern city of Chandigarh. That's Aman Garg, Diluit Kaur, and Akajam Jasita. Now, Akajam is currently at university studying for a Bachelor of Arts degree, and she's president of the Rotaract Club of Guru Gobind Singh College for Women. Dilrit has a bachelor and master's degree in computer applications and is president of the Rotaract Club of Chandigarh, Midtown. And Aman is a former president of the Rotaract Club of Chandigarh, Midtown, who holds a master's and a bachelor's of commerce. Now, all three exemplify youth leadership in health education and awareness, and their projects demonstrate how collective community action can drive meaningful change. So to Aman, Dilip and Akajam, hello, good afternoon, good evening to you. Welcome to the webinar. Are you all there?
Yes, good evening, sir. Good evening,
Hello there.
everyone.
Good evening.
Hi, yeah. Dilip, did you want to kick off? I know you want to say something about how you are representatives for the heart of the spirit of Rotary, which is Rotaract.
Absolutely, sir. I would like to first pay a lot of greetings to our esteemed Rotarian leaders, district officials, and my fellow Rotaractors and all the guests today. I am Rotaractor Dilreet Kaur, along with Rotaractor Aman and Jessica, and we are today the representatives for the heart of the spirit of Rotary, that is Rotaract. We are here not just as Rotarians or Rotractors, but as concerned members of global community facing an immense and yet entirely preventable tragedy. And the tragedy is, not to make it obvious, cervical cancer. It is a silent, cruel disease that steals daughters, mothers, and sisters, often in their prime of their lives, simply because they did not have access to an injection or essential information. Our generation, the youth, has the power to end this. And I want to share why this cause moved us from being mere observers to passionate advocates about it. To begin with, should I continue? Is it
No,
okay?
go for it. Yeah, absolutely. I'll let you roll away with it.
Lovely. So to begin with, the question posed to us was what particular situation or experience inspired us to make cervical cancer eradication our mission. And for many of us in Rotaract, it wasn't just a session or a PowerPoint slide, it was a face and a story. For many of us, it was a lot heart-touching and close to our hearts. And I remember distinctly an outreach we did at a village in the outskirts of Chandigarh. And we met a woman. I don't particularly remember her name, but let's call her Aarti. And she was a single mother of two, and she was barely 35, and she had just been diagnosed at a very advanced stage. And we got an opportunity to talk to her. And while we had a conversation, I remember the voice the voice she talked to me, and it was not filled with anger, but it was full of defeat. And she said that if only I had known about this vaccine when my daughter was young. She's 10 now, and her question was, would it be late for her as well? And that was the moment of realization that cervical cancer is not just the cancer that can be eradicated, it's really just the cancer that can be eradicated by a vaccine, yet it continues to immensely impact the vulnerable. And that was our fire. And it showed us the unacceptable gap between what science offers and what society really delivers. Our inspiration is the promise we made to Aarti and to, of course, ourselves to ensure that no young girl has to face a life-threatening disease that her mother could have easily been protected from. And this was not just a health project, it was a movement for social justice and intergenerational protection. And moving forward, I like to hand over the mic to my fellow tractor, Jessica, with next thing coming up.
Thank you so much, Dilrit. So, shall I forward with my next presentation then? Mr.
Yeah,
Dane,
yeah, no.
you can give it.
Please, Jacinta, go for it. The floor is yours. Tell me more about how the drive has worked for you.
Thank you so much. So, as for the introduction, my name is vaccination drives versus the situation now. So, it's basically about before the Rotary intervention as well as the situation now. Before Rotary and Rotaract met, there's a flexible priority. The landscape was defined by silence and scarcity. The before, the conversation around HPV and vertical cervical cancer was confined to medical journals and urban clinics. In many rural or underprivileged communities, there was zero awareness. The vaccine was seen as a premium, expensive commodity, completely inaccessible to those who needed it the most. Young girls were vulnerable, their parents uninformed, and yet the health system offered diagnosis only when it was often too late. It was a vicious cycle of ignorance and expense. The now, let's since Rotary stepped in, this has drastically and dramatically shifted. The campaign has injected awareness, accessibility, and affordability into this conversation. We have leveraged Rotary's immense network to partners with governments, source vaccines at lower cost. And most importantly, it has provided a sense of trust and credibility that no individuals or NGO could even tackle upon. The now is defined by hope. We see lines of students waiting for vaccination, driven by informed choice, not fear. We have transformed this into from a taboo subject into a public health conversation and conservation. So making the eradication of cervical cancer is a tangible and a hard work of the Rotary, near-term reality for our districts. Thank you, and I would like to pass my mic to Dilrit again.
Thank you, Jessica. I would actually agree to the fact that we are making change today itself because of this great webinar we're having. And finally, we must talk about the challenges that we were asked about, that what challenges did we really face during the vaccination and awareness drives we conducted over here. And I feel our journey is a steep climb, and the difficulties we faced highlighted the deep-rooted barriers we must overcome globally. First of all, of course, there is the funding hurdle, and the vaccine is precious, and arranging necessary funds for mass drives is our biggest mountain. We realize that the passion is not only is not enough; it requires planning, relentless grant writing, and building multi-year commitments. We need to learn to transform empathy into detailed project proposals. The second thing that was a big challenge was the permission and logistics. Securing permissions from schools and hospitals was a complex task, and it's clear that the success does not only lie in a single drive, but in consistent follow-up, building personal relationship with administrators, and representing our efforts as partnership that benefits their community, not just a one-off event. The third thing that was one of the major challenges we faced was the parental permissions and the misinformation. This was arguably the hardest challenge we had to face. Parents often or mostly hesitated or outrightly refused the permission due to the lack of awareness, baseless rumors, or the sheer fear of injection their children felt. And our solution to that was empathy. We needed to move away from cold facts and held small, intimate parent seminars where we addressed every single doubt using Rotarian doctors to speak directly to them about their own daughters and why they should choose the vaccination. And last but definitely not the least was the awareness on importance. We needed to shift the focus. It was not about selling a vaccine, it was about giving a girl a guaranteed future. And we framed the vaccine not just as an intrusion, but as an investment in her education, her career, and her health, of course, allowing her to be fully present and empowered in the real world. These challenges weren't setbacks at all. They are our greatest teachers. And they taught Rotract how to eradicate a disease. And you must first eradicate fear, silence, and ignorance to eradicate a deep-rooted disease like such. To conclude all of this, I would like to request Aman sir to please come forward and say a few words.
Um, Almost everything has been covered, but the awareness and the vaccines is the only two swords which can defeat this. We have seen the past, we are shaping the present, and we have clear path to the future. We are Rotract, we are young, agile, and fiercely determined. Let the memory of Aarti and the promise we hold for every girl motivate us. Let us use our energy to secure the funds, break down the bureaucratic walls, and speak to every patient who holds a doubt. Cervical cancer eradication is not just a medical goal, it's a promise. Let's keep that promise together. As previously said, it's not women who are victim, it's us. Thank you.
Aman, Dilpreet, Akujam, thank you ever so much. How articulate. That was inspiring for us to hear your words today. And what a fantastic project, and really inspirational. So let's head back to Alabama in the United States. We heard earlier from Professor Isabel Scarinci from the University of Alabama discussing or mentioning Operation Wipeout. Well, let's now hear from Amari Lowe and Emilian Staples, two high school students from Birmingham who are involved in Operation Wipeout. Amari is a senior. There you are, our pictures on the screen. Amari is a senior at Valley High School in Valley, Alabama, who's planning to study at the University of South Alabama next autumn towards a Bachelor of Science degree in Radiologic Sciences. And Emilian, who is a senior at Lafayette High School in Alabama, has plans to join the Air Force and attend the University of Alabama to pursue a career as an obstetrician and a gynecologist. Their enthusiasm and leadership shows that advocacy can start at any age, as we've just heard from in India, and almost anywhere. So to Amari and Emilian, welcome to this webinar. Delighted to hear from you. my first question to you both, ladies, is why did you get involved in with Operation Outreach?
Amar, you can go.
Okay. Well, when we first joined our class, we had this program that we started, which was Operation Wipeout. Dr. Scarizzi came to our class and provided lots of information about Operation Wipeout, and we just all, joined on the adventure and helped out.
And yourself and Amelia, sorry, I said Operation Outreach, Operation Wipeout. Why did you get involved? What was the inspiration to you?
Well, as Amari said, Dr. Scarinci came in and she told us about HPV, cervical cancer, and the problem that our county had. And I seen the opportunity and I wanted to help solve the problem.
Fantastic. Because basically, ladies, you've got a success story to tell because in the county where you live, HP vaccination rates hovered at around 30%, and your efforts have led to a remarkable set of results. 81% vaccination coverage in one high school and 65% in another. That is formidable numbers. So tell me more how you achieved that.
So when our health science class found out that our county had the highest rates of cervical cancer in the state of Alabama, we knew that we needed to take action. Dr. Scarinci educated us on HPV and cervical cancer and how it can be prevented. And then as a class, we identified our audiences and developed the message that we wanted to send out to our community. We developed posters, videos, and logos that we thought would appeal to our peers. We held a lunch and learn at one school and a school-wide assembly to another school, which we educated our peers on HPV and vaccination. We also hung posters in our schools and local businesses. We feel like the more you get a message out into the community, the more people care. And I think those steps made a huge difference in our vaccination rates in our community.
But you're not going to stop there, are you? I think you've got further plans. So what are your plans for middle school outreach?
We visited our middle schools at the end of the school year last year, and we went to every 7th and 8th grade class and presented information on HPV vaccine, played games, and sent home more information for parents so they could not only their students can be informed, but also parents would be informed. Our school superintendent, which is Dr. Sharon Weldon, and our school administrators have been amazing to work with. They have supported our efforts 100%, and we are planning to go back into the middle schools this year to reach the next groups of students.
But it's not just the schools, is it? You're going to try to spread out into the wider community, which
Of
I
course.
think you're going to be championing awareness around cervical cancer screening and that critical importance of follow-up care and treatment. So, what are the challenges, do you think, and how are you going to overcome them?
Okay. In our community, there are many socioeconomic issues that affect cervical cancer awareness and screening, such as a lack of resources, knowledge, and even transportation. So, to fix the problems the best way we can, we found a lot of solutions. We're taking every opportunity we can to find present information about screening to our community. We participated in a school parade that is well attended by the community, and we have set up information booths at several events around our city. We do have some challenges that we are working through. In a rural area, there are very few public forums, and we have the opportunity to share our message. So we continue to spread awareness as much as possible by putting up Operation Wipeout posters, setting up booths, and working with Dr. Scarinci and others to make screening more accessible to our community.
Now, hopefully, this webinar is going to be seen by quite a few people, and not just now, but after this goes out there. And so, if you had a message to other young people who may be inspired by what you have done, what would be your message to them?
Getting screened for cervical cancer is a small but important step for your health. Cervical cancer can be prevented with regular checkups. These screenings can find problems early before they become serious. Taking care of your body helps you live a long and healthy life. Making time for this checkup is an act of self-care and gives you a peace of mind. Sometimes the best way to lead is to lead by example. And a good way to do that would be getting checked regularly. Everyone, even young people, can make a difference, and nothing is too small. Whether you're starting with something small as talking to a loved one or talking to a crowd, you never know the impact you may have on someone. Many people go years without getting checked simply because they do not know or they may be scared. Knowledge is power, and when you have it, you should use it wisely.
Wise words. Starting small and knowledge is power. Some really good points there, ladies. Thank you ever so much for joining us today. You're sort of living proof that change happens, and actually it happens when young people lead. So, as I said earlier, inspirational. Thank you ever so much to you for joining this webinar this afternoon. Also, thank you to our Rotaractors from India too. So, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
So, thank you very much, Amari. You take care. So, our next speaker will focus on how Rotarians can raise awareness and support evidence-based projects. So let me introduce you to Dr. Noesi Castro Espades, who serves as the Area Focus Manager for Disease Prevention and Treatment and Maternal and Child Health at Rotary International. Noesi joined Rotary in 2021. She provides strategic direction for Rotary's global health initiatives, and she works to expand access to healthcare in vulnerable communities. Noesi, you're very welcome. Please take the online floor.
Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction, Dave. Let's get right into the presentation. Next. We're here to help. My talk will be about what Rotary and our members have been doing to address cervical cancer and some direction for the future for anyone interested in supporting cervical cancer elimination work. Next slide. I wanted to bring this slide is that we have a vision for global health, our areas of focus for disease prevention and treatment and maternal and child health. And this will make a lot of sense as we get into the rest of the presentation. But as a global organization with clubs and members at the community level, we will collaborate with local, regional, and international health providers to address preventable and treatable causes of illness and death while promoting equitable health for all. And these are all things that we can do, as you can see, as you've seen with the earlier presentations. Cervical cancer is definitely preventable, and it is also treatable. Next slide. So, cervical cancer elimination has also become one of our priority programming areas within the two areas of focus, the prevention and treatment of cervical cancer, and it also ties into our other priority areas like reducing morbidity and mortality from vaccine preventable diseases, and it also addresses access to prevention and treatment of care for STIs. Next. Okay, so why does Rotary invest in cervical cancer prevention? It's settings. Rotary as an organization and through our work with the Global Polio Eradication Initiative supports vaccination. We also support screening and education and overall treatment through our areas of focus. Like polio, our projects to address this disease empower communities. It works to address mortality and more importantly, focusing on strengthening the health systems in an effort to protect our legacy of eradicating polio. And with Rotary being everywhere and in almost every community across the world, our presence makes us very well positioned to launch a response to cervical cancer. Next slide. So how do we currently support cervical cancer work? With the current landscape of financial resources, I like to remind Rotary members that they have access to the same money that they have always had access to, primarily through global and district grants. So global grants are available for projects that are addressing the prevention, screening and treatment and advocacy work. Global grant funding can also be used to procure equipment for community outreach. We can build and strengthen partnerships, which we've learned from polio is extremely important because we cannot do this alone. So partnerships with the ministries of health, I don't advise going into a project without the work of the Ministry of Health, partnerships with universities, partnerships with NGOs, partnerships with other organizations like the WHO, with UNICEF, and other partners on the ground. And we can provide technical support through Rotary Foundation staff. I'm always here to help. We have our grant officers that are always there to help. We have a cadre of technical advisors who are experts in the field. We have action groups like the Reproductive Action Group for Maternal and Child Health. We have the Health Education and Wellness Action Group as well that has dedicated a significant amount of time and resources to addressing cervical cancer. And of course, we have the Fellowship of Healthcare Professionals, where through this group, we have been hosting a series of webinars to keep Rotarians informed and to compile a list of experts and to continue to influence addressing cervical cancer. Next slide. So, what have we done so far in this area? There's over 150 global grants and counting that have been funded across the world. This amounts to over $12 million invested in cervical cancer initiatives, and the projects cover the complete spectrum, the 3 pillars of addressing cervical cancer. So there's prevention, diagnosis, and treatment through the vaccine, through screening programs, through raising just general awareness. And we continue to partner with organizations that continue to support our members in implementing projects for this work. Next slide. Where can Rotary clubs become engaged? So these are direct avenues that our members and that many of you on the call can actually dive right into. We've heard from the Rotaractors, there's a general consensus that awareness is extremely low in many communities where we're seeing a high prevalence of cervical cancer. So a project to raise awareness is extremely important in your communities, with your friends, with your families. Rotary members can, like they have been doing with polio eradication, can support vaccination campaigns for HPV throughout their communities. And through medical equipment, we can equip and enhance screening services, so to provide equipment for HPV testing, training for conducting BIA. We can provide training and equipment for colposcopy, working on treatment and referral systems. These are all things that Rotarians can access funds and can even do without funding, as we've seen with Operation Wipeout. They're really advocating for national screening, treatment, and vaccination guidelines. There was a question in the chat about, is it recommended? Why don't we have national screening guidelines across the world? The WHO actually recommends having national screening programs and national cervical cancer elimination strategies. So this is a good advocacy. How can we help? So the Rotary Foundation and the Fellowship of Healthcare Professionals can support directly your clubs or your districts in connecting you with experts. The cadre can support you with developing and coaching around project development, around conducting community assessment. We continue to fund resources for global grants, for district grants. There's even programs of scale, and we really want to see impactful, evidence-based, scalable initiatives. And we can continue to, through my office and through our grants officers, even through our partners programs of scale, to connect you with academic experts, connect you with implementing partners. You've heard from many experts in the field who are actively working, actively researching about cervical cancer and HPV vaccination that consistently come out to support our members and to provide a voice for the work that's going on across the world. And Rotary and the Fellowship can also help you with visibility and storytelling. We post on our website, we post blogs, be able to share the great work and the successes from any project you may develop where we're seeing really great outcomes. Next up. So next, what can you do as a Rotarian? Contact your Fellowship of Healthcare Professionals. Dr. Phillip will share some contact information. Contact your cadre, contact the action groups. They are ready to assist you in project development and in finding meaningful ways to address the issue. Look for your partners. The Ministry of Health should always be a priority partner as we continue to assess ways to address the problem. NGOs, hospitals, are all great places to start. And even with your community leaders are important to get involved. Rotaractors, the youth, survivors are all great people to engage and just promote cervical cancer awareness in your club, in your district, in your community. Tell somebody about what you've learned. Share a presentation or invite an expert to share a presentation at your next district meeting or at your club meeting. These are all just easy. Promoting awareness, making sure people know that this is indeed an issue is a great way to start, and it costs $0. Next slide. And with some tips, and you'll receive this when you receive the slides, but for countries that do have national health guidelines, make sure that projects are aligned with them. Evidence-based interventions, extremely important. Understanding if there's any training needs to be able to support screening and treatment, addressing the infrastructure. Is there equipment needed? I always emphasize to respect cultural sensitivities and to be cognizant about the current culture or religious landscape of a particular community to be able to tailor meaningful messages to those particular community, and make sure that whatever screening projects that are done, that we're able to link the community to treatment. And I don't want to say most importantly, but make sure that we incorporate measurement from the onset of project development and that go beyond the simple outputs, the number of things that may have been issued across the program. Next slide. I think this is repeated. Next slide. Okay. And this may be my final slide, but I just wanted to emphasize that together we can eliminate cervical cancer. It is one of the cancers that, we have the prevention, we have the treatment mechanism, we have a screening mechanism, and Rotary clubs, Rotary members, Rotaractors are always seen as great advocates and catalysts for change. The Rotary Foundation is here to support you. Again, you still have access to the same dollars that you've always had access to. And Rotarians really can lead the world in cervical cancer prevention, because no woman anywhere should die from a preventable and treatable disease. And that is what I want you to take away from my presentation. And thank you so much. And next up, we have a wonderful video to share with you. It will also be shared with you by email. And I encourage you, I actually know that you'll be inspired and moved by the video. Share it with your friends, share it with your family, share it with your network. Thank you so much.
Cervical cancer is one of the most preventable cancers. And with a global effort, we can eliminate it. Nearly all cases are caused by HPV, a common virus that most sexually active people will contract at some point in their lives. While the immune system usually clears it, about 10% of infections persist and may lead to cancer over time. The good news is that, like polio, there's a preventative vaccine. The HPV vaccine can stop most cases of cervical cancer before they start. Routine screenings can catch changes to cervical cells before they become cancerous, and when caught early, treatment is highly effective. Globally, Rotary members are using their expertise to lead cervical cancer projects from Nigeria to India to the islands of the South Pacific. This work is necessary because one woman dies from the disease about every 90 seconds, most in low and middle-income countries. Now, imagine a world without cervical cancer, where mothers, daughters, sisters, aunts, and women aren't at risk or lost too soon, leaving holes in their families and communities. That world is possible. Get vaccinated. Vaccinate your children. Talk about it in your communities. Do your part by supporting vaccination drives and screening and treatment programs. Working together, we can end cervical cancer for good.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Noisi, for that inspiring presentation in promoting the work of Rotary and the Rotary Foundation, Rotary's charity indeed. So now we come to the man who's actually pulled this all together, Dr. John Phillip. John I've known for a long while. He's a Rotarian from Newbury Rotary Club in England, in Berkshire, England, and is a member of the International Rotary Fellowship of healthcare professionals. John is also the Rotary Foundation cadre lead for Europe, Middle East, North Africa and Central Asia. A retired surgeon with a distinguished career in cancer prevention and treatment, John continues to lead Rotary initiatives across Europe and the Middle East as well as Asia. And I know that most recently, John, you're involved in the Rotary Great Britain and Ireland initiative to send medical aid to the Ukraine. John will now close our session with a call to action, a message which brings together everything we've heard today and sets our direction for the future. John, over to you.
Thank you, Dave. My goodness, that was compelling. I think there is nothing I can add to what we have already been said to highlight the need for urgent action. And I want to say a huge thank you to all those who took part in this webinar. There have been a number of questions which you have not yet been able to answer, but all your questions and all your comments will be responded to in due course of time. Now, I want to thank you, Isabel and Linda, for making that compelling science behind the elimination of cervical cancer. We have been thoroughly moved by the words of Aman, Dilreed, and Jasita from India. And they said, we are young, agile, and fiercely determined. Let the memory of Aarti and the promise we hold for every young girl motivate us. I don't know how many of you know what Aarti is. It is a reference to light. It's about removing darkness. We also heard from Amari and Amelion about their inspiring role in Operation Wipeout. I urge now all Rotarians on this call and those who will be watching it later to take action to promote the elimination of cervical cancer. I want you to start a conversation in your club, in your district, as to what you can do to support the health authorities. Draft your proposals and email them to us. We'll connect you with the right people to develop your proposal further into an evidence-based, impactful program. This appeal is on behalf of the Rotary Fellowship of Healthcare Professionals. We are a Rotary Fellowship with action. So if you are not yet a member, please join us. Finally, thank you, Dave, and Phil, and Rachel, and Gianna, and other TRF staff for your support. Wherever you are, have a great day. Let's make a difference. Thank you.